Hello and welcome to Thursday Night Talk. This is a show where we discuss the week in Humboldt, the local issues, and the local personalities with local personalities. I'm Talvi Fried, and I'll be your local host for the next hour. Did you experience panic due to confusing information during Humboldt County's last two tsunami events? Were you unsure what the warning system means or which parts of the county are safe in case of a tsunami event? Joining us tonight to answer some of these questions, plus much more, hopefully, are two Ryans. Ryan Aylward, Warning Coordination Meteorologist and Public Information Officer for the National Weather Service, and Ryan Derby, Emergency Manager for Humboldt County's Office of Emergency Services. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here too. There seemed to be a lot of confusion during the last tsunami warnings. I know we just got another one yesterday, or at least that was.
There was a big earthquake. Yeah, no watches, warnings, or advisories were issued for our area. But
okay,
yeah.
That's good, because I forget which politician posted on their Facebook page and said, "Oh yeah, we're going to keep you updated." And that was the last message, like 14 hours ago. So I'm glad to know that in case something did happen. How does that work? Let's start off with pretend I don't know what anything is. And because there are listeners out there or viewers watching on TV that may not be completely sure. Let's say somebody's visiting from out of the area and they're like, what's the tsunami? Because this happens, apparently. There are people who think, oh, that looks like a fun thing to go to the beach to watch. So let's just get into what are we warning of?
Yeah, so I'll start there. So from the Weather Service has a one division, that the National Tsunami Warning Center. There's also a Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. They're watching to see if there's a potential for a tsunami from any earthquake or volcanic eruption or something like that might happen across the Pacific and also the Atlantic Oceans. Most of the events, of course, are in the Pacific, where that's where the biggest earthquakes are around the Pacific Rim. So they're watching that, and so they when they detect an earthquake, they start to think about, is this the right type of earthquake? Because could it have lifted the ocean floor and caused a tsunami? Is it big enough to have caused a tsunami? And then if so, where was it? How much travel time? How much time will it take the wave to get to any specific destination? How big will the wave be? What's the threat level that people need to know about? And then they send out the information that's related to that. And so just to give an example, what happened just yesterday, the one you're talking about, there was a 7.8 in Kamchatka, Russia, same place. The 8.8 happened, a couple months ago. So they detected that earthquake, determined a threat level, which was an advisory for part of the Aleutian Islands, and issued that for that location. But then for the rest of the Pacific, they determined there was no threat. So ended up being that we did not have anything that was issued for our area here in Northwest California. But there were advisories for the Aleutian Islands. So that's where some of that information, people were hearing about a threat level may have come from. Also, I communicate with other Ryan here on the call about it, just letting them know, hey, this has happened. Tsunami Warning Center is investigating it. And then once they came up with a conclusion on the threat level, we were able to clear that and say, okay, there's no threat for us, so we don't need to worry about it. So all of that stuff is happening all the time. There's earthquakes happening across the Pacific all the time. And the Tsunami Warning Center is analyzing those. A lot of times, the vast majority of the time, not a threat, right? We don't have tsunami warnings and advisories all the time. It just doesn't happen. So most of the time they just tell us, don't worry about it. But that's basically what's going on. Yeah, if anyone's curious how that all works.
And just to expand on that a little bit, we've had kind of a unique opportunity in the last 9 months or so to see three different incident types as it relates to tsunami. In December of 2024, we had a large local earthquake that triggered an automatic tsunami warning message for a local source event. And then in July, end of July 2025, we had the Kamchatka event that triggered a tsunami advisory for portions of our coast, a tsunami warning for portions of our coast, and resulted in that loud wireless emergency alert that goes to everyone's phone. And then yesterday we had a 7.8 that occurred in Kamchatka area, still a really large earthquake. And what we saw then was what's called a tsunami information statement, right? Where that tells us that something happened and we're going to have to wait for more information. So between the weather forecast office that Ryan works for and local Office of Emergency Services, we have conversations about how do we communicate with the public and what do we do as far as action on the county's end. So yesterday, when that 7.8 happened, we got a statement out pretty quickly saying we're aware that this happened. We're waiting for more information. We'll let people know what to do, what to be concerned about when we know more. And fortunately, it turned out that there was no impact expected, but it really is, multiple layers of government and local coordination that comes up with the best recommendation for any kind of protective action that the community needs to take.
So there was some sort of mix up with the last tsunami warning, that very loud noise that went out is, at least that's what I'm aware of, because not everyone was supposed to get that. And then everybody did. So what happened there?
Yeah. Yeah, I can go into what happened in the July event, the 8.8 in Kamchatka. So I mean, 8.8 is a huge earthquake. It was the sixth largest recorded earthquake since they've had instruments out there recording things. So it's one of the biggest earthquakes that's happened. So the threat level was very high. And the Tsunami Warning Center was doing the analysis to determine what the threat really was going to be for all the coastline. And they had determined that advisory level was going to be the primary threat. So for everyone on here to know that's listening, advisory is when the Tsunami Warning Center is expecting tsunami waves, which are going to go up and down for a long time, many, many hours, of 1 to 3 feet. And it sounds small, but it's literally taking the water column and like lifting it 3 feet and then moving that back and forth. That's really powerful. Every 20 minutes, up and down. So there's a big danger to beaches, harbors, in those areas. But one place stood out, and that was Crescent City. Crescent City had the potential for 3 to nearly almost 6-foot waves based on their first model. And so they wanted to really look into that and figure out what's the threat for that. So it took a little bit longer while they were trying to determine the real threat for Crescent City. And when they finally got to the point where like, yes, it's going to be over 3 feet, and they thought they had to issue a warning for Crescent City, they also looked just south of that. And they looked at Trinidad, they looked at Klamath, those regions, and found that those two were going to exceed the 3-foot threshold. And so the way the Tsunami Warning Center works, they have breakpoints up and down the coast. One is at the Oregon-California border. The next one's the Del Norte Humboldt border. And then you have to go all the way to Cape Mendocino before it's the next breakpoint. So now they had tsunami warning level waves within that next breakpoint area. So they issued the warning for the 2 segments. And that included, of course, Humboldt Bay as well. And so that's why the warning was issued for this area and why everyone received that alert on their phone. Because those tsunami waves were exceeding the level at which it could be like inundating dry land for areas from Trinidad north up into Crescent City area. So that was the reason the warning was issued for our area. But for Humboldt Bay itself, and where most people in Humboldt County live, We weren't expecting that. We were expecting the waves to stay within the harbor. And so, Ryan and I were discussing this, going back and forth, like, how do we message this? How do we let people know that they don't really need to evacuate for the vast majority of the people here? And we're going to be okay. We're going to be safe. So that was a task once that warning came out, because the wireless emergency alert is an automated system. Once the warning is in the county, it goes to the whole county. It's just the way the system's set up. So a lot of people got that alert in that moment.
And just to add a little bit to that, where the partnership here really came into play was that wireless emergency alert came as a complete surprise, both to the local weather forecast office and to our office and to our state partners, right? And I think the first call that Ryan Aylward and I had after that wireless emergency alert went out was, what the heck just happened? And how do we message what the true safety needs are? So it really brings up the importance of signing up for and following instructions in local emergency alerts, because the federal system, as powerful and great as it is, it tells us that something's wrong, but those constraints of how far the message goes, you have people out in Willow Creek up on the top of a mountain that are being told to go to higher ground. You can't get to higher ground if you're up there, right? And there's no ocean within any visible space out there. So immediately after those federal alerts go out, we issue local notifications that pin down the specific areas that need to consider evacuating. Or in the case of much of Humboldt coastline, it was just stay off the beaches and avoid coastal waterways. So within how our system works, the sheriff of each county has local evacuation authority, right? So when these wireless emergency alerts go out, we're having this constant back and forth, internally and with the weather forecast office, and they're talking to the National Tsunami Warning Center to determine where is the true threat, right? And our job at the local level is to take the message that's sent out from the federal government and then further define that to say, here's where the local hazard is, here's what you do, here's where you go. So there's multiple systems that I think community members need to be aware of. And it's not that one is better than the other, it's just that we're providing different information.
That is what it seemed like. I live right outside the tsunami zone, and so getting that, I was very confused, being like, do I really need to evacuate? I had family visiting, and they're not from the area, so they're not used to tsunami warnings or the constant level of natural experiences that Humboldt County seems to have. And so they're like, should we go somewhere? And I was like, no, it's fine. And it wasn't until I got an email from CERT, from Community Emergency Response Team. And they're the ones that were like, nobody has to evacuate. Just got word, we're all good. Though I'm wondering why the county didn't send something out to everybody first.
So we did. Our system is called Humboldt Alert. It's basically an opt-in system. So we encourage residents to sign up at humboldtgov.org/alerts. There's other ways that we can communicate with people who aren't registered for the system, but we did use that on July 29th to basically say this is an advisory level event, and then follow it up the following morning with another kind of reiteration of that message. And a lot of the information that we put out, not only is it going through the alerting system, but it's mimicked on social media, our current emergencies webpage, and then we're putting out press releases. So multiple avenues of communication. Is anytime we send out an alert, we have to basically use every means necessary.
Okay. I'm making sure I'm signed up for this. What was it? humboldtgov.org/alerts?
Correct. Yeah. Or you can call our office at 707-268-2500, and a member of our team will get you signed up.
Cool. Apparently I'm opted in, but I don't remember getting anything after that for the last tsunami. And then there was, so the last one I felt like was dealt with much better than one that happened maybe a few months before or a year before. It's been a minute, when everybody just kind of rushed into the streets and blocked all the roadways to get out of town. That didn't happen during the last earthquake. Uh, I mean, the Russian earthquake that had the tsunami, but I'm trying to remember what happened because it feels like there's a natural disaster every other week here. And that, I mean, there kind of is. There was the one, I think it was later in the evening. It wasn't super late, but just everybody, I was not in Eureka at that point, and I was like, oh, good, because everybody's trying to get out of there. And
Yeah, that was December 5th. And I assume that's the one you're referencing when we had the local earthquake and then the tsunami warning immediately following.
I believe so, because
Yeah.
it wasn't a very big earthquake. I
Yeah.
mean,
So
yeah,
yeah. So I can talk to that one a little bit. So that earthquake was a ended up being a 7.0. It was right off the coast. It would happened. It was something in the early. It was like mid morning, if I remember correctly. And the the Tsunami Warning Center, when they first analyzed it, and the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, they worked together and checked out the numbers, and they both came to a conclusion that it was about a 7.3. And the location was just off our coast, right at the southern end of Cascadia. Cascadia is the big fault that's off our coast that could produce a big tsunami someday. And so it was in the right spot and the right magnitude to have potentially produced a tsunami along our coastline that could have gotten to the coast in 10 minutes. That was that from everything that they knew at that moment. They had to make a decision. They try to make these decisions in minutes, because tsunami waves can travel so fast. So at that point, it was above a 7.1. All their statistics and the things that they've looked at say that yes, there's a threat of tsunami from this, and so they issued the warning that came out 5 minutes after the earthquake. But the main thing about that earthquake was it lasted for a long time. It wasn't violent. We didn't get shaken really hard. It was not that bad, but it lasted a long time. And the length of shaking is your indication of how big of an earthquake it is and how much energy may have been released from that earthquake, which then can tell you how much the water may have moved right along our coastline. So you shouldn't wait for the official alerts from anybody for a local event. It should be the earthquake that's your warning. So places like the school out in Manila, they were on the dunes, before the warning even arrived, because they knew that the earthquake was their warning and they needed to get to high ground. And they walked there. That was the biggest thing, is they walked to high ground. And that's what everybody should be doing during a local event, is thinking about, where's the tsunami zone? You kind of need to know where it is a little ahead of time, know where you work, know where you sleep, know where you go recreate, and know the tsunami hazards in those areas and where high ground may be. So in the event of an earthquake that you need to evacuate immediately, you're able to walk out of the zone and get to high ground. Because yeah, everybody getting in their cars, which is what we saw happen in that event. We had traffic jams, and if you're stuck in your car when a tsunami wave arrives, it's not a good combo. So yeah, so from everything that we had known at that moment, tsunami warning was the right call. People needed to get out of the zone and stay safe. We were able to, the Tsunami Warning Center was able to analyze everything and come to a conclusion there was no tsunami threat from that earthquake in about an hour. But the biggest thing is everybody just needs to be prepared ahead of time, have a tsunami plan, have an evacuation route thought about, and be ready to implement that plan in the moment, especially if you live in the zone or if your kids go to school in the zone. Understand what the plan is going to be for everybody so that we don't get in that same scenario. I've had several different talks about this. Like, I don't blame anyone for the way they responded in the moment. They responded what was best for them and what they felt would keep them safe. Now we just have to take that moment and learn from it.
and we'll talk about what learning from it means right after this quick break. You're listening to Thursday Night Talk. Welcome back to Thursday Night. I am your local host, Talvi Fried. I am here with Ryan Aylward, the Morning Coordination Meteorologist and Public Information Officer of the National Weather Service out here in Eureka, as well as Ryan Derby, Emergency Manager for the Humboldt County Office of Emergency Services. Those are some titles. Those are definitely some titles that you've got there. And you seem to know what you're talking about, which is great. I think that there is an overestimation of the public's ability to fend for themselves sometimes, to put it mildly, as we were discussing before the break. Tsunami warnings, what the last few ones were, why they happened, and all that. Like I would love for, I'm very, dare I say, obsessive about safety. I'm the one that if I have the time available, I'm not working, I'm going to be in that training session that CERT's offering or Blue Lake Casino is offering. I love this stuff. It's my favorite hobby is zombie apocalypse survivalism. And as much as I wish to be able to trust my neighbors to take care of themselves, I am also very aware that they forget to take their trash out sometimes. I forget sometimes. So to put this expectation of here's this huge public disaster, as happened when that warning went out, when there was the 7.0 off right off the coast or the bottom of the Cascadia tectonic plate. It's hard to, like, it almost feels irresponsible to put out a warning that large for people who it will cause panic is my fear. And like I have friends that are like, in case of zombie apocalypse, I'm just walking into the middle of the road and being eaten because they have no chance for survival. And I'm like, no, I like you. So I have to somehow protect them too, because I want them to be there at the end of zombie apocalypse, barbecuing sausages, watching, the world get back to nature and all that stuff. That's my end of zombie apocalypse. I don't know how yours is, but it's so my point is there a better way? What is the appropriate way to make sure that everyone is actually safe and people who are alter abled or think differently than those who obsess on this topic? What do we do? And if you send out those things, again, the roads were packed with people. Roads were essentially shut down and useless. If there was a real tsunami that hit us during that point, that would be very dangerous and awful. All of those people in their cars. And as you had said before, you want to know where you can walk to. Because a 10-minute warning is still 10 minutes. And not everyone can run a 10-minute mile, but that's a mile up you can get, around there. So what is the answer to this of we want to inform everyone so they have the best possible chance of survival, but also we don't want them to hurt themselves with a kind of mob mentality of I have to get out of here, the crab scratch pulling each other down in the bucket sort of situation. So what is the responsibility for you two in your positions, as well as your awareness of what the county's responsibilities are to protect the people from themselves?
That is a very good question. And I've got kind of two half formulated answers for you. So As it comes to public education and public information, we have really two primary responsibilities. When an emergency happens, public information is focused on getting the right information to the right people at the right time so they can make the right decision, right? And that needs to be coupled with good preparedness education before an incident happens, where we're providing all of the best information we have, the resources that are available to people to let them know where to find preparedness material or emergency planning material. But ultimately, it comes down to the individual making that choice to create a plan, know their hazards, know their zone. Because, if we look at tsunami, which is what we're talking about today, a local tsunami, local big earthquake causes tsunami. A lot of public safety agencies, police, fire, they have policies in place that prevent them from going into tsunami areas to rescue people while that tsunami surge is coming. So that means if it's a 20-hour event of surges coming every 20 minutes, that's 20 hours that local public safety agencies cannot go into that zone to help people. So that means for that duration of time, people need to make informed decisions based on the information that we provide to save their lives, right? And in some communities, that means going up to a dune and waiting until resources can come to them. Or in the cases of, we talked about Eureka, not getting in the car and being stuck there for 3 hours in traffic, but taking that 2 minute or 5 minute walk outside of the tsunami hazard area to get to safety. I don't know that that touches on all of the aspects, but I mean, we do have a responsibility to protect and inform our community members. And there's a certain point where, there's that old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink. Our job is to provide the trough with the water full, make sure that it stays full, and in times of crisis, give additional resources, additional information so they can make informed decisions.
And I'll just add on that you talked about the fatalistic thing. I'm just going to walk into the road, right? That
Yeah.
that can happen. You start to say, well, this is overwhelming, and there's no way I can prepare for it. Um, I think for earthquake and tsunami in particular, you can prepare for these pretty easily. It's a matter of understanding the reality of what the risk is, right? And especially for Humboldt County, um, the risk, the tsunami risk is actually limited. The vast majority, 95%, I don't know, may even be higher than that, of people where they live and work can walk out of the zone in 10 minutes. There's very, very few places that you can't. It's like the North Spit, South Spit, the Eel River, Delta, if you're way out there, yeah, you're not gonna be able to walk that distance. But everywhere else, there's high ground nearby. And so it's just a matter of knowing that and knowing where to go, preparing that a little ahead of time. Just look at the maps, go to the Redwood Coast Tsunami Work Group's website, check out the maps. You'll see the yellow area. It's the worst case scenario. It's the Cascadia subduction zone, rupturing, having a 9.0. Earthquake lasts 5 minutes. I mean, it's like the big worst case scenario. And you can still get to high ground in the 10 minutes. And then preparing for the earthquake itself, drop, cover, hold on, strap furniture to walls, making sure that your house is prepared for it. All of that we can do. And so I think it's something that, people shouldn't look at it as, I'm not going to be able to survive, because through basic, some fairly simple stuff that we can do, we can really get there to the point that, yeah, we can survive this event, even Cascadia, whenever that does happen, because someday Cascadia is going to go, and so we just need to be ready for it.
And I think there's kind of three main things to know that are sticking out in my head. One is the difference between a local tsunami and a distant source tsunami, right? Local tsunami is a local felt earthquake. distant source tsunami could be, hundreds or thousands of miles away. And the big difference there is the timing, right? If it's a local source, that means, as Ryan mentioned earlier, you could have a tsunami surge coming within 10 minutes. Where if it's distant source, like the Kamchatka event, that could be 8 hours, right? And that response from local public safety, local emergency management is going to look very different depending on what the source of that tsunami is. Where if it's near source, no one's going into that zone. Everyone should be walking out as soon as they feel that earthquake. But if it's distant source, that gives us time to, conduct evacuations, close roadways, close beaches, close access points, and really have a more focused effort on notifying everyone that needs to be notified. The other important thing to know is, and we've already said it, is for a local source tsunami, your your notification is the shaking. You can't wait for the wireless emergency alert. You can't wait for Humboldt County OES. You feel that shaking, it's strong, it's lasting for a long time. It's better just to drill it out and have nothing happen than to be waiting for an alert that may not come. So those are kind of the main things that are standing out to me. And then I guess most importantly is knowing your tsunami hazard zone, right? Or tsunami hazard area. Going to the maps that Ryan Aylward mentioned, is there's no need for people to evacuate as far inland as Neeland or Willow Creek. It's just a couple city blocks, or maybe you're in one of those unique communities that's a little bit further, but um, there's no need for mass inland evacuation. In if there ever is, we have way bigger problems than we can deal with.
And I just want to add one more thing. You talked about access and functional needs, folks that need help getting out. I think that's something that us as a community, those folks actually do need to drive. They're going to need that space. And so for the folks that can walk out, let's walk out and give the space. Let's open it up so that they can get to safety. If we're all in our cars and we're all jammed up, now we're all just stuck. And the folks that need the help, they're going to have to, because no one, let's say it's a local event, no one can come into the zone to help you. So you need to have that arrangement with, neighbors or somebody that can help you get out of the zone. Or think about, if there's a way that you can get closer to you so you're not in the zone all the time. I don't know what the, full result, how you can really solve the problem. But the main thing is you gotta have to rely on neighbors and somebody and have an agreement ahead of time.
So, what are the alerts that we could possibly get, and what do they mean? Because I know there's a few different ones, like, yes, there's a tsunami, get out now, versus there's potentially one, or hey, there's an earthquake. I love how it happens like 5 seconds before the earthquake hits. It's just like, wow, that's a lot of time right there. But I guess 5 seconds can make or break a life in this instance. Uh, so, what are these warnings that we would be getting from the city or the county or on a national level, and what should we do with them?
Yeah, I can start from the federal and then we'll go down to the local. So at the federal level, we, for tsunami specifically, there's statements that Ryan Derby mentioned earlier, which is just the Tsunami Warning Center saying, hey, there's an earthquake and there's no threat. So you'll probably never hear of those because we get them at the Weather Service. We may forward on social media, but that's all we really need to do. We don't need to tell anyone about it if it was something far away, right? Then there's the watch. The watch means that the Tsunami Warning Center has detected an earthquake that could have produced a tsunami, may have likely produced a tsunami. We just don't know the magnitude of threat yet. So we don't know if this is an advisory level event, a warning level event, or possibly nothing. But the level has gotten to the point where they're like, yeah, we're actually concerned this could be a legit thing to worry about. Then they'll upgrade to an advisory or a warning. The advisory, like I said earlier, is the threat level where it's, mostly harbors and beaches, a 1 to 3 foot tsunami wave. Oh, and most people don't need to evacuate for that. People that have boats in the water might need to take their boat to deep water. But generally it's just stay off the beaches, stay away from the water, the normal tidal range of the the water near the coast, so the ocean, sorry. Then there's the warning, which is where it actually inundates dry land, and that's the evacuation point. But there are different levels. There's those distant source events where you may not have to evacuate all that much, like happened from the Kamchatka event. There really wasn't much to evacuate in that event, even though places potentially could have had waves over 3 feet. It really depends on the situation. For the advisory watch statement, you'll see at least for the watch and the advisory, you'll see it on the Weather Service website. You may get it on weather apps and things that you've signed up for, but we don't activate the emergency alert system. We don't activate wireless emergency alerts to your cell phones. It's more limited. It's only the warning level where it's really a true, like, large scale threat to life and property, that the WIA is utilized, where you get it to your cell phone. And WIA is also used, as you mentioned, for earthquakes. So yeah, it's only a 5-second lead heads up sometimes even less, but that might be just enough time for you to cover your head and get down. And so now at least you're not moving when the earthquake strikes. It is still useful. And so that's the federal level, and then it goes to the local level for them to give the more precise things that goes, what is it that you need to do in that location, especially for a distant source. Local one, you got to respond to the earthquake. We've covered that. Just want to mention that again. Local one, it's respond to the earthquake. But for distant source, I'll pass it to Ryan.
And that is a good segue, because for us, the federal government doesn't send out, wireless emergency alerts for a watch or advisory level. When we look at the different levels of tsunami at the local emergency management side, it's different posture for alerting. So for a watch, typically that's going to go out, social media to, email listservs. We're not putting out a public alert, but we'll use kind of conventional mechanisms of communicating with people to say, hey, something's going on. Stay tuned for updates. We'll provide more information later. You can get more information at our current emergencies page, which is humalertca.gov. For a tsunami advisory, as Ryan Aylward was saying, that's get out of the harbor, avoid beaches, coastal waterways. That we typically would be sending a Humboldt alert message through our local alert and warning system. We've created polygons or shapes for essentially 2 areas of the county. We've got a coastal notification zone and an inland notification zone. An advisory is going to, for us, initiate a coastal notification that's going to tell people to, avoid those areas near the beach. And if they're on the beach, get off the beach. And then for a warning, kind of highest level, people already have gotten the wireless emergency alert from the National Weather Service or National Tsunami Warning Center. We follow that up with whole county alerts. So there'll be an alert for the coast that says, if you're within and I'm paraphrasing what our alert templates say, but if you're in a tsunami hazard area, then we'll link to the map, get out of that area, go to high ground now, essentially. And then another alert goes out to the inland communities saying, don't go to the coast, right? As you mentioned earlier, a lot of times the biggest issue we see is people wanting to go and take pictures at the beach when a tsunami's coming in, or they're going to go out to the jetty and take a selfie as the wave's coming in. That's where people get hurt, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So we look at these different tsunami levels as different levels of alerting and different protective actions that need to be taken. One is an avoid statement, one is an evacuation statement.
What is Everbridge?
So Everbridge is it's basically the system that hosts our Humboldt alert. It's the vendor name of what our alert and warning system is. So if I use them interchangeably, Humboldt alert or Everbridge, it's the same system.
Gotcha. I was looking at the website that you mentioned. And it's like, download the app to get the warnings. And I was like, is that why I didn't get the warning? Because I have to download an app. And I don't like that, but I'll
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, you don't have to download the app. Sometimes there's different ways that we can notify people through that system. And the benefit to it is it's set by user preference. So if you sign up and you want to get a text message, we'll send it as a text message. If you have a pager and you want to get a page, we'll send you a page or a phone call or an email, or we can push notifications directly through the phone app.
I just want to know who has a pager these days, because that is wild. I haven't seen one in so long. We'll be right back to talk more about how to stay informed and what to do, which I think we need to get into that eventually. Like, what do we do when this happens? Like, personally, to save yourself. What are we going to do? We'll find out with both Ryans when we come back to Thursday Night Talk. Welcome back to Thursday Night Talk. I'm here with Ryan Aylward, Warning Coordination Meteorologist, Public Information Officer of the National Weather Service, as well as Ryan Thurby, Emergency Manager for the Humboldt County Office of Emergency Services. And we're talking tsunamis. Tsunami warnings, what they are, how to not be ridiculous in case that happens, as we've seen the public be with everybody rushing to their cars and trying to get out at the same time. It turns out, don't do that. You don't have to. And you can walk about 10 minutes and be out of the worst of the zones, or be actually completely safe. So we just went over what the alert systems and their meanings are, as well what is needed. And essentially it sounds like, well, okay, we're all on our own for a while, because I didn't realize that but it makes sense. It completely makes sense that, the police and emergency services as a whole they're pretty much, is it mandated that they do not go in during active tsunami zones? Because he said if there's a 20-hour tsunami warning, they can't go in and help anybody. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, more or less. So for a local tsunami warning, public safety agencies will not go into a tsunami hazard area. And for distance source, we have what we call a T minus 1 hour or time minus 1 hour policy, where 1 hour before expected arrival time of the first tsunami surge, public safety agencies pull their resources out. And it makes sense, because you can't effectively respond to an emergency if you're being, sucked up into the flood of it, right?
True. Very true. So we
And,
had.
and can I add one thing about tsunamis, is that they're really unpredictable. The waves come in, they can be different sizes. The first wave is not always the biggest. It could be the fourth, fifth, 10th. You don't know. And so it can be, people can get deceived by what's going on, and it can feel like, oh, this isn't a big deal, when all of a sudden the biggest wave comes in, 2 hours later. So it's really important that, you can't just start going back in when there's a tsunami warning in effect. You really have to stay out of the zone for a long time. And that kind of goes to that issue there, that, yeah, it feels like, oh yeah, they could go in, but the wave could come in right behind them. and then they're caught. So everyone just needs to stay out of the zone until somebody, be it likely the Office of Emergency Services, lets them know that it's now safe to return.
So there was something that happened the last time that I had not experienced before in my time in Humboldt County, and that was the sirens. I mean, I hang out in Ferndale a lot. There's sirens all the time. That's a whole different thing. To the point that I wonder if there was a tsunami siren in Ferndale, like, would people just be like, oh, probably just somebody falling again? Like, would they even take it seriously because it happens all the time? And the answer is yes, they would, because if you know anybody from Ferndale, they are on their apps listening in to what is happening every time that siren goes off. Though we had that happen in Eureka, a place where it, other than the, firemen's sirens going off or the normal sound of things happening in Eureka, it's not common to have tsunami sirens. So I think, was that perhaps part of why people freaked out? They're just like, the sirens never happen. Yeah. Let's talk about the sirens here because that was a new one for a lot of people.
Ryan, do you want to start that, or do you want me to start that one?
Well, I can just mention sirens here locally. So first thing, sirens are good for distant source events because they can we can activate the emergency alert system. Let's say we have a big local earthquake, 9.0 local earthquake. We just had a big, huge earthquake. Infrastructure is going to be damaged. You need to respond to the earthquake to get out, because even if I go and press the button to activate the emergency alert system, even if the Tsunami Warning Center activates all the cell phones in the area, there's no promise that that system is even going to work if the system, if we've had severe earthquake damage. So, so you don't want to rely on any communication system for a local event. So tsunami sirens really would only help with the distant source thing. Here in Humboldt County, we many years ago received sirens that were metal and very corrosive in a salt environment. And so they have all essentially, at this point, I don't think there's any in Humboldt County, maybe one in Arcata that works at this point. So it's not something that is very reliable when it comes to a local event, and it's not something we should be relying on. Tsunami sirens don't work inside homes. You might hear it if you're really close to it. That's great. But generally that they're not designed to be heard inside. And if there's any wind, storming going on, if the atmospheric conditions aren't right, sometimes the range of this siren can only be like a quarter mile. It can be really, really short, a half mile at best in those really bad conditions. Really good conditions, yeah, they can carry it far away, but sometimes it really doesn't go very far. So they are not a reliable service. They do help a little bit, maybe for outside, in a really remote location. But right now, I don't believe there's any sirens that would really work during a warning here in Humboldt County, except in Shelter Cove, I believe. So I'll pass it to you, Ryan, on anything else.
Yeah, and on that note, we've gotten a lot of questions about sirens in the last couple of years, and the stance that we're taking is that they're kind of an icon of preparedness, right? For some of the reasons that Ryan mentioned, they have a limited audible range. Even if you're on the beach or if you're surfing, you're likely not going to hear that siren over the sound of the waves crashing that you're surfing on. Or, I mean, you've likely been to Humboldt County beaches and you're the only person on that beach for a couple miles, right? Unless you're standing, right next to or within close range of that siren, you're not going to hear it. And just to reiterate, we talked about distant source tsunamis being really the only situation where sirens could be valuable. But again, with distant source tsunamis, we have time, right? And we have lots of other systems that we can use to notify people, whether it's the wireless emergency alert system, that really annoying loud sound you get, local alerting capacity through our Humboldt alert system, or dispatching, law enforcement and fire out with their high-low sirens on their vehicles and using public announcements over loudspeaker. I think the sirens, just because they're standing there, creates kind of this sense of security for people. But understanding all of the different mechanisms that we have to notify people that are faster, more specific. You know, a siren can tell you something bad is happening, but it doesn't tell you what's happening, what to do, where to go. It would have to be followed up with some other kind of notification. So we rely more on those other forms of communication that are specific, are very efficient at reaching thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people at the same time, in lieu of sirens.
Okay, so I mean, we have some time left. So, one more question before we get into round robins, and that is just what is the best course of action for people to take in case of any of the emergencies that could happen here? And there's a lot. So, I know that's a big question because there's different things you would want to do depending on what the emergency is. So, for somebody who only has 30 seconds to think about what they're doing next, or the 10 seconds, what should people do?
I think, you know, just living in Humboldt County, we have the, I guess, the fortune of living in one of the most beautiful places in the world, right? But that comes with lots of natural hazards, right? We have ocean hazards, we have seismic hazards, we have wildfire hazards, severe winter storms, landslides, pretty much anything you can think of can happen here. So with that in mind, you know, not preparing for a specific type of emergency, but preparing for, you know, all uncertainty, right? Having a kit, having a place to go, and having, you know, some emergency contact information. Those are really pretty simple, inexpensive things that you can do today to just prepare. You know, have a go bag. And that could be as simple as throwing a couple granola bars and a bottle of water and a change of clothes in a backpack. But I think most importantly is signing up for emergency alerts. Because if you're not signed up, we can't reach you. You don't know what's going on. Even if we can't reach you, if you have a kit and you have a plan, then you're better positioned than someone that doesn't.
Okay, the other Ryan, would you like to?
Well, I was going to say you said everything really well. You know, the other thing, you know, we do have a lot of hazards. And so there's stuff to be prepared for, you know, evacuating for fire and, you know, flood if you in a risk area for that. But there are some things we don't have to prepare for if we are on the coast here. We don't have to worry about really bad heat. Doesn't happen very often on the coast. Don't have to worry about snow too often right on the immediate coast. We don't have to worry about tornadoes. We don't get those. So there are some other things that we don't have to worry about, and I think that's always important for people to remember, because I think we get overwhelmed sometimes when we say, "Oh, it's going to be, we got to worry about Cascadia, this enormous earthquake and this tsunami it's coming." No, I mean, yes, we do have to be prepared for that, but there's so many other things we don't that other people have to be prepared for in the plains. They have to be ready for tornadoes going through. So we all have our hazards. We have our things that we need to be prepared for, and we can do it. It's just a matter of just taking a few minutes to really, you know, look at a plan, come up with a plan for your home, for where you work, where you would recreate normally, and just know what to do if you were in those scenarios, so that it's not this like you were saying, you got 10 seconds to respond. No, you've actually thought about this. So in that moment, you can go to your mind and say, "Hey, I thought about this. I have a plan. I know what to do. I've practiced it." Practice evacuating from, you know, your work or home if you are in the tsunami zone, or if you're not in the tsunami zone and you just happen to go like to Old Town one day, just go down to the waterfront and then walk out of the zone and see how close it is. It's really close. So it really doesn't, it's not a far distance to get to safety. And doing those little practices makes everything so much easier in the moment, and you'll feel way more comfortable. You'll feel empowered. You'll know that you can do it. So that's my advice.
And I think, you mentioned earlier that preparedness kind of seems like this daunting task, but if we can kind of shift the mindset a little bit and think about preparedness like you're prepping for a short road trip or for a, weekend at a hotel. Typically, you're going to grab some snacks, you're going to have a change of clothes, you might have a book or something to keep yourself entertained. And that's really what having a go kit is prepping for a road trip. And the only uncertainty is you don't always know exactly where you're going or how long you're going to go there, but you know what the basic supplies are. In Humboldt County, we have a lot of avid outdoors people that like to go camping, like to go hiking, and a lot of these preparedness supplies are already in your home. It's just reframing what they're used for and having, an immediate supply ready to grab whenever you need it.
Awesome. So it is nearing the end of the show, almost the end of the show. And I want to give you each about 2.5 minutes, maybe a little less, just to have your moment to talk about whatever you'd like, whatever you want people listening at home, or if they're driving in their car and they're like, oh, tsunamis, this is an interesting show. What would you like them to take with them on their way towards a happy and healthy tomorrow in Humboldt?
Yeah. So, you know, I think one of the biggest things is just learn and understand what the risk is and really know the hazard area. So if you can, go to the Redwood Coast Tsunami Work Group's website. Check it out. RCTWG. Just type that into a search engine, and you'll find it. It's the first thing that comes up. The Redwood Coast has Tsunami Work Group has all the information you could need. They have the Living on Shaky Ground magazine that'll give you list of all the things to get your house prepared, what you need to do if a tsunami is coming, and the different sources from distant or local. And then they have all the maps there. The California Geological Survey has a GIS map where you can literally go down to the street level and see if your home or wherever it is that you're interested in is in the zone or not, and where might be the easiest way to get out. So that's my biggest suggestion is just learning and investigating into what the threat really is for you, so that you can feel more comfortable. We've done evacuation drills in different towns, and the biggest feedback we get is, man, that I did it. I got here in under 10 minutes. I didn't think I could do that. And, that was with them waiting until the siren went off or we set off some sort of alarm. And then they went and they got their go bag and they walked out of their house and they had to walk to the evacuation site, and they were still able to do it just walking slowly. It's amazing how far you can go in 10 minutes. So, so check out Redwood Coast Tsunami Work Group's website and get all that information there.
That should be the new theme. It's amazing how far you can go in 10 minutes. It sounds so motivational. Like,
Yeah.
just start walking, you'll be somewhere brand new and safe. It's interesting. Well, thank you. And Ryan, other Ryan.
I don't know if I can follow up that tagline that he just came up with, but two things. So in addition to what Ryan Aylward said, Redwood Coast Tsunami Work Group is the place to go for earthquake tsunami hazard information. I also encourage people to go to our Humboldt County OES preparedness page. We've got basically all of the hazards that you can think about preparing for listed on there with tips and tricks for what to do. It's humboldtgov.org/prepare. And then I guess just kind of the final thing for me is we live in kind of an isolationist society where people don't know their neighbors anymore. They don't know their names. They don't know what they do. They don't know what they're capable of. And at the very basic level of preparedness, if all you do is go next door, knock on your neighbor's door, introduce yourself, and just get to know them a little bit better, that's someone that could help you when an emergency happens. And then go to the neighbor on the other side and do the same thing with them, because that's your immediate network. When we talk about local preparedness, it's people helping people, neighbors helping neighbors, and that's essentially what it comes down to.
Well, thank you so much to Ryan Derby, the Emergency Manager for the Humboldt County Office of Emergency Services, and Ryan Aylward, the Weather Coordination Meteorologist, Public Information Officer for the National Weather Service Eureka branch. I appreciate you both so much for being here. We'll be back next week with another Thursday Night Talk. If you have topics or suggestions for the show, please email us at kzzh@accesshumboldt.net. A reminder, the show replays Friday evenings at 8 p.m. right here on KZZH 96.7 FM. You can watch our show on Access Humboldt's YouTube channel or, of course, on your cable network, thankfully. We still have some programming left that allows free speech. Cheers. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'll see everybody next week. Local host Talvi Fried.